All right, everybody, welcome back to the Peter Schiff Show. Tom Woods in for Peter today. And very glad to be joined once again by Mark Sisson, whom we have not spoken to on this program in about 10 months. But Mark, before I even introduce you, I just want to tell you that I have gotten more response to our talk on this program than any interview I have ever done in my entire life. I'm getting pulled aside by people constantly and told that this interview changed their lives. They go to your site. They're interested in what you're doing. It's had a great effect on their lives. I had no idea it would have that type of impact. But Mark is the author of the very important book, The Primal Blueprint, as well as a cookbook, Primal Blueprint Quick and Easy Meals, and the Primal Blueprint 21-Day Total Body Transformation. His website is marksdailyapple.com, absolutely indispensable. Mark himself is one of these athletes that it boggles your mind even to think about. He had a top 5 finish in the 1980 U.S. Marathon Championships and finished 4th in the February 1982 Ironman World Championship. But he is not going to tell you that you have to be a marathon runner to be in good physical condition. But Mark Sisson, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Hey, Tom. Great to talk to you again. It's been a long time.
Sure has, but really glad to have you back. Let's start off, though, not assuming that everybody knows what this is. Let me give you 2 minutes to make your brief pitch and explanation for what the Primal Blueprint is, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
Sure. The Primal Blueprint is my guideline for being able to access the latest in modern genetic science and evolutionary biology to make the kind of choices in lifestyle that manifest themselves, if you want, in a strong, lean, fit, happy, healthy, productive body. What we've done is we've gone back and looked at the research and realized that we each possess the recipe, the genetic recipe to build this strong, fit human being. Each of us has that recipe, but like many recipes in life, if you don't put the right kind of inputs and the right kind of ingredients, you don't get the intended outcome. So the Primal Blueprint is really about finding these hidden genetic switches that we can flip on and off. We've discovered sort of how to access those genes that burn fat faster and turn them on, and how to access the genes that build muscle and turn them on, and how to access the genes that cause inflammation and turn them off through the foods we eat, the types of exercise we choose to do, sun exposure, the amount of sleep we get, lots of different little environmental inputs that we can identify. And it's really taken off. And as you've acknowledged, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions now, of people have noticed a dramatic improvement in their lives. And the real take-home message, Tom, which I find most gratifying, is the sense of empowerment people have when they realize that most of the future of their health is not tied up in some governmental program or some massive insurance scam or some association of doctors. It is entirely in your hands, depending on choices you make.
Well, Mark, it's funny you mention that because I've been seeing in my own experience that certainly in libertarian circles among young people, this is really sweeping the whole movement to the point where, as one of my friends put it, if you go out with a group of young libertarians and you order pizza, they practically boo you for this. Now, what's the difference, though, between – a lot of people will use the word paleo, and I always correct them. I'm not paleo. I'm primal. Can you just clarify the difference?
Well, primal is really my brand. So I've created this thing called the Primal Blueprint, which is really a lifestyle. It's not just a diet,
right,
but it does encompass sleep and play and how you use your brain and how you interact with your family, and a number of other lifestyle choices that we might make. So it's not just limited to diet and exercise.
Right.
Paleo started out as a diet, and a fairly rigorous one, I might add. What we tried to do with the Primal Blueprint is be as inclusive as possible. So I did not want to be restrictive the way most of the paleo adherents like to think of themselves. You can't have dairy, you can't have alcohol, you can't have this, you can't have that. I'm more of the mindset that you have to prove to me that it's deleterious to my health to take it off the list. And if you can't prove it, then hey, let's include it. So the Primal Blueprint it differs from paleo in that regard, and also, I was initially early on I said, look, I'm not worried about saturated fat. Saturated fat is not only not a bad guy, it's probably a good guy if it's consumed in the right quantities in the right way. Whereas paleo was sort of always a little bit hesitant to take on saturated fat. So I would say that Primal is a kinder, gentler paleo.
What is if you had 10 seconds and you could give people one piece of advice with regard to diet, what's the one thing they could do starting today that would improve their health?
Dramatically reduce all grains and sugar.
Okay.
I had 7 seconds.
You had
left
7 seconds left, but I think that does it. The shorter, the better. All right, that's great. I think that really is it. And at first, the thing is that it's this. You think you can't do that because it seems like grains are in everything, but actually, think of all the things that you can eat.
Well, this is what I tell people. I say, look, if you're willing to accept the research that's pretty conclusive that much of what ails us now is the result of dietary choices that many of us have made over a lifetime. And by the way, having tried to do the right thing and having assumed that we were doing the right thing by following conventional wisdom, when you recognize that that processed grains and simple sugars and omega-6 oils and fats are the cause of probably 80% of the degenerative disease that we look at right now. If you can get your mind around that fact and just say, as long as I don't eat from that list, I can eat from this list over here that includes meat, fish, fowl, eggs, nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruit. It's a pretty large cornucopia of foods that you can eat, and included in that group would be butter and heavy cream and lots of the types of fats that people used to think we couldn't eat at all, and now we find are actually quite healthy, and again, in the appropriate context, health enhancing rather than health harming.
Now, we've got a break coming up, and we've got calls for you specifically. But before we do that, I wonder if you could give just a short, I know this is probably asking a lot, but I want you to address this so-called China study, which whenever I talk about this stuff, I get 95% of people either neutral to positive, saying that this is great, I did it myself, the Primal Blueprint is a lifesaver for me, and I get that 5% saying, what about the China study? Can you tell us what is the China study and why do you disagree with it?
Well, the China study was this massive longitudinal study done by T. Colin Campbell years ago, in which he looked at 60-plus counties in China, mostly rural, and took 8,000 data points, 8,000 different variables about what they were eating and living circumstances and so on, and tried to correlate them into an idea that he had that meat was bad. He literally went into the study with a preconceived notion that he was going to show that consumption of meat was correlated with an increase in heart disease and cancer. And while the book purports to demonstrate that, numerous people have taken it upon themselves to cut apart this huge study and analyze the data points and reconfigure them in ways that made more sense. And the bottom line is you find out that there is no correlation. And by the way, not that correlation is ever causation, as in the original analysis in the first place. In other words, just because you even show correlation does not mean you've shown that there's a cause. But an example would be an association between LDL cholesterol and heart disease that was teased out of information when you took the averages across the board of all the individuals in these counties, and he showed a correlation. But if you looked at the actual individuals, those with the highest LDL cholesterol had the lowest heart disease. So it was a weird kind of thing where when you average out across the population, and you think you get one single data point, it doesn't mean anything because we're all individuals. And when you looked at the individuals, you didn't get that same correlation. In fact, you got the exact opposite. The book is full of those sorts of little points and ecological fallacies and all kinds of little issues that we could do 3 shows on that, and again, books have been written about it, but I pay no credence to the China study.
Okay, Mark, let's hold on. Let's go to a break, and we come back. We've got a full board of calls of people who want to talk to you, ask you questions. We had somebody actually who was going to offer a testimonial, and then we cleared the board for you and accidentally cleared him off too. But I mean, it's even better than these calls are going to seem. So we're coming right back here with Mark Sisson of the Primal Blueprint. You're listening to the Peter Schiff Show, the gold standard in talk radio. All right, we're back on the Peter Schiff Show. Tom Woods in for Peter, joined by Mark Sisson of marksdailyapple.com. Of course, the book and idea are the Primal Blueprint, and I link to his books at my own page that I made for this topic, tomwoods.com/primal, which also links to my wife's Primal blog, which she started, inspired by Mark and his work. All right, Mark, let's take some calls here. Let's talk first to Haley in Fort Lauderdale. Haley, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks for taking my call. First, I want to say, Tom, you're great. I love your books. I love Liberty Classroom, and I love how you are able to present topics like history, economics, and politics with clarity, because they can sometimes be complex and dry subjects. And I love your characteristic, incisive wit. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mark, this question is obviously for you. I have read Primal Blueprint, and my first question is this an all-or-nothing diet? And I ask this because I have an unusual job. I work on luxury yachts, and I'm actually not responsible for my own cooking. We have chefs that do all the cooking. So I can, things like snacks, and obviously I don't have to eat the rice or the potatoes, but so I can eat the veggies and the meats and things like that, but I can't control what they're cooked with, like if they're cooked with sesame oil or canola oil, and most of the meats are organic, but they might not necessarily be grass-fed. So, especially in terms of weight loss, is this like sort of an all-or-nothing diet, or should I not even try if I can't control that?
Thanks.
Oh,
Haley.
no. That's a great question too, by the way, Haley. I'm sitting here like salivating and jealous over your job. So that sounds like it could be a fun position. The all-or-nothing concept, we initially came out of the blocks by stating that this is really about choices. And that's one of the things that resonates so much with the libertarian movement, is that we're not suggesting there's right or wrong, good or bad, black or white here. We're just providing evidence that if you make some of these choices, you'll have a higher likelihood of an intended outcome. And that's where the grass-fed beef come in. That's where the line-caught fish. That's where the reduction in those seed oils that you're talking about become fairly important. But the bottom line is that if you can make choices, good choices in this direction, and I'm assigning a value already, good choices, but that's sort of what we talk about here, ones that are intended to point your genes in the direction of better health, then 80% of the time, if you can do that 80% of the time, then you're on your way. You're on track. And at that point, you are trending toward an ideal body composition. You are trending toward a decrease in reduction for heart disease. You are trending toward a reduction in the number of days you lose to cold and flu over a year. You are trending toward better skin and more energy and all those things. And really, from that point, the choice is one of, okay, now do I go all in? Now does it become all or nothing? Only from the perspective that I want to speed up the results. Not that I won't get any results by being 80%, but that I'll get some, and from there I can choose to go all in. Now, we've even talked about doing a primal cruise, and one of the things that appeals to me about a primal cruise is the opportunity to take 1,000 people and show them how to forage on a buffet line. So how to avoid the potatoes and the pasta and the rice and the bread and the rolls and all the other, the things that we tend to want to stay away from, and how to seek out the meat and the fish and the healthy fats and all of the tasty little goodies. And I think that this is what life has become. It's become this great, again, cornucopia of choices. And one of the problems for people who don't have the information is the choices are so overwhelming. They go, wow, that's a great sweet roll over there and a great, bowl of granola, which I think is healthy over there, and all of these assumptions they have because of the access to all these foods. My job is just to sort of teach you how to rethink, the effect that these foods have on your body, and to choose based on the availability, make the best choices. So when we get on board a ship and we've got certain limitations as to what we can eat, we can say, okay, as you've said, I'm not going to eat the pasta and I'm not going to eat the rice, and which is, by the way, you can have a little bit of rice. This is not a completely anti-rice program, but it's more about a spectrum of best choices to not so good choices. So even if you can't get a hold of grass-fed beef, doesn't mean that beef isn't a better choice than, say, a plate of spaghetti. It's really about understanding what the biochemical ramifications of these choices are, and then being okay with making those choices. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm hoping it does.
Well, thanks for that answer. Thanks for the call, Haley. Mark, I'm going to prevail on you the second time you've been on, second time I'm asking. Any chance you can stick around for one more segment after this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great, because we got calls, and we got only a couple minutes before the break is coming up, and I want to just take those to say that whenever I see somebody who has, and again, I understand this isn't all just about weight loss, it's all about overall health, and I understand that, but still, I see somebody who's taken off a lot of weight, and that person tells me, well, I did it through the Primal Blueprint, and I think, great. But once in a while I get somebody who says, well, I did it through one of these programs that sends me the food in the mail, and it's these horrible, low-fat, 500-calorie meals that are going to starve me to death. There's no way you're going to live your whole life this way. Number one, you're not going to continue eating that way. Eventually, you're just going to rebel against that kind of a regimen. But secondly, it's all lousy, low-fat, awful stuff. I mean, what's your reaction when you see people doing this to themselves?
Well, it's one of, I guess, empathetic sadness. I mean, I know that there's a much more pleasant way than this choice that they're making with low-cal, low-fat. I mean, anybody can lose weight on a low-calorie program in a couple of weeks. The question is, can you sustain that for the rest of your life? And, of course, the answer is no, you can't. I created this program because I wanted to be as strong and lean and fit as I could possibly be with the least amount of pain, suffering, sacrifice, portion control, and calorie counting. And I think I've hit upon that with the Primal Blueprint. This is not about counting calories. It's
right.
about being intuitively able to sit at any meal and enjoy, by the way, every single bite of food you ever take in.
Wait, hang on just one second, Mark. We got to hurry up and take this break. You're listening to the Peter Schiff Show. Stick around. More Mark Sisson after this. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Peter Schiff Show. Tom Woods in for Peter with the great Mark Sisson. I absolutely insist you visit marksdailyapple.com. I mean, this is not a suggestion. I insist you go to marksdailyapple.com. Certainly read the Primal Blueprint. He's got follow-up books. You may also check out tomwoods.com/primal, which links to Mark's stuff also, as well as to my wife's Primal blog, talking about going primal with children. Sometimes there can be a little resistance there, but then you make it fun. Now, speaking of which, Mark, practical question, what does a Primal Blueprint person do on Halloween?
Well, you talk about seeking out. You seek out chocolate that's 85% or higher. And you trade away all of the other stuff for that. At some point, particularly with kids, you have to let them have their fun and be somewhat vigilant over how much they're taking in. But again, this is simply about choices, about lifestyle choices, and that's the beauty of it. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm giving people one option that they can choose or not to do. But if they choose to do it, they do so with a tremendous body of knowledge behind it.
Right. I was just thinking in terms of what do you give to other people's kids when they come to your house? Yeah, so dark chocolate is the way to go if you could possibly do it. All right, let's go back to the phones here then. Let's talk to Josh in Houston. Josh, you're on with Tom Woods and Mark Sisson.
Hey, Josh.
Yes. Hey, this is Josh, and Mark, about 8 months ago, Tom and Lou Rockwell convinced me to go primal. I've lost 31 pounds. My question's in regard to cheating. When I do cheat, like this weekend, I kind of cheated and maybe gained 3 or 4 pounds, and it seems like it takes a while. You gain it real fast, but then it seems like it takes a while to lose that back off. I didn't know if that's normal, if there's any science behind that, or...
Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And first of all, congratulations on your 31-pound weight loss there, and I don't know how much you had to lose or if you have more to go, but that's a great steady weight loss. The whole thing about cheating depends on how much metabolic damage you had done to yourself in the prior decades. Now, one of the things that happens is like if I'm very, very resistant to grains, and I've cleaned myself up over the past 12 years to where I've gotten so good at living without grains that if I were to cheat on a weekend and take in a couple of slices of pizza and a bowl of cereal and some bread, I would probably gain 10 pounds, most of which would be a water retention as a result of the inflammation that I was causing in my body. In other words, as a result of the systemic inflammation. So the good news, bad news here is that the good news is you can lose the weight, you can clean your act up, you can trend toward ideal health. The bad news is that once you've done that cleaning up, now if you go off the wagon, and now you use the term cheat, I don't mind that term, but now if you have a cheat day, now you really notice the results. Now you're, if you have a giant full piece of cake at a party or something like that, now you really do know, you feel the effects of what's going on biochemically in your body. You feel the effects of the adrenaline and the insulin and all of the other concomitant neurohormone releases that take place as a result of this insult that you've just given a body that up to now has done a good job of cleaning itself up. Which is not to say you shouldn't cheat, but what it does tell me is that the cleaner you eat, when you do cheat, if it feels bad to you and manifests itself in either a bloated stomach or a weight gain, maybe the brain ought to be saying, ooh, I guess this isn't so good for me. Maybe I'll do this less and less over time.
All right, thanks, Josh, for the call. Let's go now to Jesse in Birmingham. Jesse, you're on with Mark Sisson.
Well, thank you, Tom. First of all, I'll say thanks to both of you. Because of you, Tom, and Ron Paul, I joined the Liberty Movement. And you talking about Mark one day in your blog, Living to Mark's Daily Apple. And after 3 days straight of nonstop reading, I ended up starting Primal back in May, and I've lost a whopping 50 pounds since then.
You lost how much? How much
Great,
have you lost?
Man.
50.
Wow, absolutely great.
Yes, I was up to about 260. I was in the Army for 8 years and started off in the Army about 215 or so, and went up and up and up and hit about 245, 250, and then I got out. 2.5 years later, I was up to 260 and just tired of it. So luckily found you guys when I did.
Well, that's great. Do you have a question or just sharing your testimony?
I just want to say thanks for that. I read both of y'all sites daily, and thank you so much for both the work that you do. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure, Jesse.
Congratulations on that tremendous success thus far, and on doing it in a relatively short period of time. I guess the only comment I have there is that you were never a guy who was supposed to be 260 pounds. The relative ease with which that came off is a perfect example of how metabolically damaged your prior diet had rendered you, and that's what we see a lot of times. That the more damaged people are, in many cases, when they get rid of the poisons, when they get rid of the things that are causing the systemic inflammation and the water retention, the weight does seem to come off, and the term we use is effortlessly. You don't have to force it. You don't have to go out and run marathons or train for 10Ks or do what they do on The Biggest Loser and burn 6,000 calories a day. What we're doing, and this is important for the audience to understand, is we are reprogramming the genes to derive most of your energy from your stored body fat so that you always have a source of energy even when you don't have food in front of you. And as a result, you tend to not have as much of an appetite, which is a good thing. So you tend to automatically choose to eat less, eat fewer calories, and burn off more of your stored body fat. And over time, this results in a linear reduction in your weight and a loss of body fat until you reach what we call an ideal body composition.
All right, thanks again, Jesse. Mark, I've thought that there's an entrepreneurial oversight out there in the world because this movement is just growing so fast. Why do we not see more like a Primal Restaurant where maybe 20% of the menu is for your friends you're dragging along who aren't quite on board yet, but 80% of it is here's finally a menu that isn't 70% sandwiches. It's all sort of primal, great stuff, and you could market this restaurant by saying the more you eat at this restaurant, the more weight you'll lose, and you won't even notice you're doing it. Now, doesn't this sell itself? Why hasn't this been done?
Well, there are a lot of. I used to be in the restaurant business, so I'm hesitant to get into it again because I lost my shirt the first time. But I'm well aware of, for instance, food trucks around the country that have become primal and are stopping at different locations. Some of them are stopping outside of CrossFit gyms, so they're literally going to where their market is located, and then offering these primal or paleo meals. So that is happening.
That's good.
I think the idea of a standalone restaurant probably doesn't yet. We still are a country of massively obese and overweight people who are still sort of unaware of what's available by making these kinds of choices. And I'm not sure somebody's taken it upon themselves yet to take that next leap.
Well, we'll wait for that. Let's talk now finally to Joseph, who's coming to us all the way from Cyprus. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. We met in Tampa, if you recall.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes. I just ordered Mark's book. I'm very intrigued. Mark, my question is, a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with lupus, introduced to the raw food diet, and was wondering if you had any concerns about that, and if you could just kind of tell me some differences between the Primal Blueprint and the raw food. Because the raw food, they proclaim that they can actually cure the lupus.
Well, there are parts of the raw food. And by the way, are you eating raw? Is meat included on your raw food program?
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay. So, because that's a big, there are different parts of the raw food movement, and one of the raw food movements includes raw meat, which I actually have no problem with, provided it's clean and from reliable sources. But a raw food program that eliminates processed grains and industrial seed oils like corn oil, soybean oil, and things like that is very much headed in the right direction. And, autoimmune diseases respond very well to the elimination of all grains. And presumably your raw food diet does not include any form of grains. And if that's the case, then you are headed in the right direction. Where I might take issue with a no-meat raw food program is I might say, well, there's no reason for you to avoid eating meat. And even thinly sliced carpaccio and sushi for fish and raw meat are consumed around the world. They're just great sources of some of the micronutrients that sometimes are missing in these vegetarian, fruitarian raw food programs. Otherwise, the elimination of the toxic foods that you've undertaken is always going to be step number one. So I really don't have a problem with your continuing down that. I would just entertain the notion that there's ways to add better sources of protein.
Okay, thanks very much for that question. We are just about out of time for this segment. I want to take this one last call, if the question can be very fast. Roger in Raleigh, North Carolina, because I think it's an important subject. Roger, you're on with Tom and Mark.
Hi, Mark. I'm a diabetic, also have celiacs, and eat non-wheat grains. But my question is, does the diet put you in ketosis? Is it intended to, so that you eliminate the use of sugar as your brain energy?
Roger, are you type 2 or type 1?
Type 1.
Type 1, okay. First of all, it's not intended to be a ketotic diet. It's not intended to put you into ketosis. That's available if you want to reduce the amount of carbs that you take in to a level, let's say, below 40 or 50 grams a day. And a lot of people choose to do that because there is absolutely nothing wrong with ketosis for the average person. Of course, with a type 1 diabetic, we do have to monitor that, and I would suggest that you not get, without very serious monitoring and a doctor's oversight, get into ketosis, because that's the one area that we look at, diabetic ketoacidosis, which is not ketosis. It's a completely different thing. Having said that, I would want you to, as a person with, did you say you have celiac as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
3 years.
There are a number of these non-wheat grains that still contain analogs of what we call prolamins, that are analogs of the gluten that would be found in wheat. So this is an area where I'd want to take a look at all the grains and say, well, maybe it's worth a 30 or a 60-day trial of eliminating them and just getting your carbs from vegetables and a little bit of fruit, and obviously monitoring that and keeping that as low as possible. But we've had tremendous success with certainly with type 2 diabetes. In fact, we reverse type 2 diabetes almost all the time with this program. And of course, even with type 1 diabetics who have a slightly different or significantly different biochemical issue, which is not being able to produce insulin, we still have tremendous success. But as you know, it takes very close monitoring to stay within those tolerances.
Thanks, Roger. Mark, we are out of time, and I mean, there's so much more that could be talked about. I guess we'll just have to have you on more regularly because people are just desperate to talk to you. But take 30 seconds to make your pitch for why people should be visiting marksdailyapple.com.
Well, it's the number one site of its kind in the world. We post regularly the latest information, have every day for the last 6 years. We look at every aspect of health, fitness, diet, exercise, medicine. It's the go-to resource for the kind of information that most people, I think, would like in order to make the kind of choices that empower them for the rest of their lives.
Mark, thanks again for taking the time with us. We much appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, everybody, that was Mark Sisson of the Primal Blueprint. marksdailyapple.com is the website. We got a short segment to close out the program after this break.